Right guys, Mark Crossfield here. Today I'm going to talk hip turn, or what I interpret as hip turn from my swing. What we're actually going to measure and look at is how much torque I use through the ground, which I interpret as hip turn. So what I mean by that, as in to move the values of torques, how much I push in the ground, I feel like I move my hips in a very different way, which would be a very good lesson for anyone who's thinking about how to use their hips in the golf swing and trying to improve the way they use their hips in the golf swing. And what I'm going to do in this video is basically show you how it changes my speed. So that's what you're going to get today if you carry on watching. Also, what it does, or what triggers there are that really harm how much I get my hips turning, use the torque in the ground, and what actually helps. So next time you hit your practice session up, you can actually start experimenting with some real forces rather than thinking of the way we shift our weight as this kind of two-dimensional thing where it's actually very three-dimensional. Let's get stuck in. So I'm going to kick this off by trying to hit a green at 160 yards. Got my 8-iron, which I'm going to struggle to get to the 160 green if I do my very safe swing that I kind of grew up playing. So I'm going to try and hit this as straight as I can. I'm not really going to try and increase any torque or hip turns in the ground. I'm going to do kind of my standard swing that I was brought up playing, which is built very much around accuracy and resisting movements. Hit that really solid, like really solid. Again, that's landing front edge and a pretty good shot. I'd take that all day long. So I'm going to try another or a few more and let's see what the pattern of shots comes out like. If I could hit everything like that, I am winning. Again, hit that really solid, like really solid. Landing on the front, rolling up, another good shot. So I'm not particularly on this trying to do anything different in the ground. I've got a decent amount of hip turn and a decent amount of hip turn this way in my opinion. I've got weight shifts going on to the lead side as well. So everything in here is exactly, look at that, it's line ball stuff. Again, landing front edge, that should release up, go on. So this kind of style of golf for me is what I'm used to. Accuracy, not particularly over long. The 160 I can get there, but you can see they're bouncing up. Slight toe on that one. Going a little left. Load shorter, but bouncing onto the green. If anything's short of that green, I'm gonna struggle. So you can see here, nice dispersion, just that last one left. Ball speed's 109, carrying 151. You can see I've got one to inside 3 foot, but I'm having to bounce them up. Club head speed around 85 miles an hour. So I've captured one of those swings on Swing Catalyst, which I'll show you in a second. That's going to allow us to really look at the forces through the ground, how I'm pushing and moving my feet in the ground to try and get that ball that distance. I'm now going to try one where I think about my hip turn. So I'm going to feel like I'm pushing right hip back further. I'm going to throw left pocket towards the ball as far as I can. And then downswing, I'm going to feel like I push right hip forwards, left hip coming back out the way before right hip then goes out at the ball and forwards towards the target. And what this is going to do is make me feel like I'm really pushing on the ground and pulling this way with my feet. So I'm going to feel almost like I'm jumping back with this foot on the backswing. And then on the downswing, I'm going to feel like I'm jumping back with this foot. Also, on this mat, we have a Velcroed on little Swing Catalyst logoed up mat. I'm going to try and rip this off with my feet. This is only an 8-iron, so it won't happen, but I'm going to try and rip it off this way on the backswing. And then on the downswing, I'm going to try and rip it off this way as well. So I'm going to change my hip movement. Doing that, I'm going to feel like I'm really instigating that by how I'm really pushing hard and trying to torque my feet on the ground. So 2 things I'm expecting to happen. I'm expecting to maybe go a bit faster, but possibly not disperse those shots as straight as you saw I was just doing, because this is definitely a big thought for me. So I've caught that really quite rank. You can see it carving off to the right. That's landing up near pin high. Clubhead speed has jumped. Didn't get a hold of that one. So the swing thought I'm using as well is I'm imagining I'm stood on a bottle top. So each inside of my feet are touching a bottle top. And what I'm going to try and do is try and tighten this bottle top as I go back, And then on the downswing, I'm going to try and flip it off the top of the bottle by spinning. Feel like I'm pushing my torques, right foot this way, left foot that way. I'm going to tighten on the way back, and then I'm going to try and flip it off on the way down. So really try and flip the bottle lid off on the way down. Let's see if I can get a strike on this one. There you go, better strike. So this instantly feels stronger. So you can see that's landing pin eye and just beyond. Almost slam dunked it. So again, I'm gonna feel, I literally feel like I've almost got skis on. So pointing this way and this way. And I'm going along the rail this side and then along the rail that side on the way down. I'm actually not thinking of going this way or this way at all. Where for lots of people, me included for a long time, changing pressures on the ground, changing weight shifts has been about trying to move weight onto right and onto left. Obviously if I do that, which we'll show you in a second, I won't have much time to use any of the torque in the ground. Bit toey that one. Holding its line nicely. So you can see it's shorter than the last one, but certainly landing further up than the toe I hit with the original shots. Right, I'm going to do one more. We'll show you the numbers, and we'll also show you how it's changed with the swing cat data as well. So literally, I am measuring through my 3D plate here from Swing Catalyst what I'm doing through the ground. So this won't be guesswork. We'll measure and then apply. So accuracy, not far off the same. I'm landing a little bit shorter, but you're going to notice on that one that my loft was probably higher. I'm guessing all the spin went up with that little hangout to the right. So again, that's my delivery issues. Let's see what the numbers are saying. So there's the dispersion, 2 right, 2 straight. So I would argue they are probably a little bit further offline. So my torques, yeah, doubling offline, so 15 foot compared to 7 foot offline on average. But we're jumping the distance by 6 yards. We're jumping the ball speed by 4 miles an hour. And I'm jumping the club head speed by 4 to 5 miles an hour. You can see the loft control, there's the last one, 33. So loft control is definitely better with the restricted swing. Face the path average is not really much different. Path moving by a degree, and efficiency slightly down because the first strike obviously was very weak. Spin staying constant, slightly higher again because that loft control just needs a little bit more work. So changing my hips, the way I try and push in the ground, the way I try and turn my hips is allowing me to gain speed, absolutely. It's losing me a fraction of accuracy. So let's have a look at where this speed is coming from, and then we'll talk about if this can actually be refound, or should I be doing the safe kind of 8-iron restricted swing in my hips. This is my 150-yard carry, so the first swing 8-iron, and you can see, look at the purple bar here, how high that bar gets. That's my horizontal, so that's me moving left to right. So it's really peaking, lots of horizontal in this one. So that's me really going this way on the downswing. And what you can see is my torque value, so this way is not as high. It's 68 pounds of force compared to the second 8-iron here carrying 154, where I go up to 75 on the yellow one here. So can I increase my torque? Absolutely, getting it up to 74, 75 pounds of force. Now look what that does, it takes away from my horizontal. In turn, what it allows me to do is my max force with my vertical, which is the blue bar here at the bottom, goes to 200, where when I'm swaying my hips, rather than my mind rotating them, I'm losing 2 of my key power sources. So the way you use your hips or not is going to have a massive influence on so many parts of your golf swing. And I think for a long time we thought so much of hips going, turning and then pushing to the left. So kind of, like I say, very two-dimensional ideas with pressure and force, which has really been called kind of weight shift. Now for me and for lots of golfers, the more I can get my feelings of weight shift moving this way and this way, from the Swing Catalyst graphs, we could see that my pressures were going right and left still. So moving pressure right and left doesn't mean you have to actually move your mass right and left, believe it or not, but that's another video. But by using this force more, is allowing me to get a lot more onto this club and then in turn onto the ball. The next question is, can I control that? Well, that's for me to practice with and develop skills of learning how to deliver with those thoughts. But that's no different to the skills that I grew up playing. You know, I didn't always deliver the club the same way. You have a lesson, someone tells you to move your weight in a certain way, and you've got to relearn how to deliver. I would never expect to push in the ground differently and for everything to fall in place. But the fact that I can push in the ground differently and find a very different speed and golf shot in effect is very, very exciting for me, and it should be for lots of golfers as well, because I think the more I get people on these plates and measure them, the more we see that there's so much energy that they're just giving away to the ground. They're not using it and taking it out and getting it onto that ball. So how to turn your hips in the backswing and downswing, this won't apply to everyone, but for me and for lots of golfers, next time you go to the range, the more you can feel that you're pushing your right hip back, left knee forwards, and then downswing, reversing that as quick as possible and taking away any of this. It'll be very interesting. You post in the comments, let me know what that does to your shots. I'm going to show you a couple of other things as well that really harm this movement that we've kind of taught for a long time. Let me just try a couple more, see if I can get this torque higher. So that's a good strike. That felt like I really got my hips moving. Yeah, so you can see that's landing comfortably pin eye now. So that's an 8-iron for me carrying 160, which, I mean, an 8-iron was 145 in times gone past. The other thing I noticed from this idea as well is I tend to draw it a fraction more. So what happens for lots of golfers who are trying to get a desired draw, restricting the movements. So ideas of keeping hips still and turning shoulders are going to restrict, I think, how much turn people can get. The more I get my hips moving this way and this way, absolutely the more I start trying to get, well, it's easy, it feels much easier for me to shape it to the left. Again, that feels like a medium to decent enough strike to play with. Accuracy's there. And it's getting there. It's getting to the 160 without me feeling like I'm absolutely having to throw myself at it. I'm feeling that I'm just trying to maximize what I'm getting out of this movement, so my hip turn, and then in turn out the ground. So for me, much more feeling like I'm going this way, less restriction, shifts and turns. This doesn't mean the shift is there, it is. But it's such a minuscule kind of fractions of a second movement that I can't figure how to get that timed into a swing. If I use my pressures with more torque, it just gets in there by default. So some ideas that you might relate to that really hamper this idea. So the first one, and we'll capture this on Swing Cat to show you the difference. I'm going to do 2 swings and we'll show you at the end of them what they come out like. It's very interesting. So a lot of lead foot flare, so left foot really pushing out, and ball wanting to default forward. So these kind of golfers are people who generally haven't got really good club face control, maybe leave the face a bit open to a path. They tend to set up this way because they're going to use slide with turn to try and control. Now where I feel I can be quite accurate with this, I absolutely don't feel like I can reach. So we've captured this swing, we'll show you. You can see how much shorter that's coming in. Accurate, but just not getting there. So that's lead foot turned out loads, ball slightly forward. This is a reoccurring pattern for people who fade and slice, struggle with balls off to the right. It just makes me have to use so much horizontal that I can't actually get the torque coming out of the ground. If I did, I feel like I would just slice it forever. And then the other big killer, and I've seen this for years, and it's been taught, you know, it still is very much a common idea of stretch, is the restricting the lower body and trying to turn upper body against the restricted lower half. Now, I mean, that's how I was taught, to be fair, so that's kind of part of my swing. So if we show you those two, that's me restricting hips, turning shoulders, trying to get stretch, if you like. I think scrambled on the front. I'll show you the numbers on those. So this one, you can see the ball is forward, left foot really turned out, and what we see is a reduction in my vertical, a reduction in my torque, and a bigger spike in my horizontal. So I'm having to really do more the 2-dimensional pressure shift, really shift across to try and catch up with that ball to get it anywhere into a strike position. Then what we see is a 146-yard shot and just cutting off to the right more. Now if we look at the last one here where I tried to restrict everything, same pattern. So this is really restricting hips in the backswing So you can see there's no gap here between my legs. I'm really calming down the hip turn. So it all looks pretty on camera. I think that's where we've gone wrong, just looking at camera for so long. Again, horizontal, massive, torque, non-existent, 55 compared to up in the 70s, and even losing my vertical, and it's coming out a bit late. Again, 141 carry. So ideas for you to practice next time up your range. What's helping me increase my torque, then in turn my speed, and this is the same through all my clubs, is by definitely feeling like both feet are much straighter on. So that idea of having skis on, like I'm stood on skis, and feeling like I'm sliding on the snow this way and this way, is massive for me, feeling like I've got increased torque. That in turn does make me turn my hips a lot more. And I think the age of restriction in coaching was massive. It's certainly when I grew up in trying hip positions and restricting, where we're very much now much more in an age, I think, of taking those shackles off golfers. And if you look at lots of the long hitters and the really good players PGA Tour now, we are seeing a lot more freedom of movement, left heels lifting, hips turning, right leg straightening, left knee popping out on the backswing, those kind of jumpers at impact. I think it's so easy for golfers to think, oh, but I just won't be able to hit it like that, I won't be very consistent. That might be the case, and you might be able to get your gains in some better impacts. That's still very much a valid point and something that you would explore. But for lots of golfers, what I find when you increase torque, so straighten up those feet a little bit more, then feel like right hip's going back. So I feel like I'm literally throwing left pocket at ball, literally feel like I'm getting it to the ball as much as I can, and I know I'm not, but that's the feeling. And then right pocket forwards and then out to the ball as left pocket goes back rather than forwards. The more I get this, what happens is my strike actually crisps up. And for lots of golfers, I find the same thing, because they're not having to do this big shift to try and find low point hits, those kind of ideas. Free up those hips a little bit more, but not this way. Let's get a lot of torque going on, peoples. Let me know what it does to your strikes. I honestly feel like I can hit line balls like this, but look at that, the 8-iron is so much more on it. That was a pretty average strike, but certainly with a lot more speed. Post in the comments down below, let me know if this helps or not. Let me know if it makes sense or not, and let me know if it's something you've thought about or practiced. The more we can start talking about hip turn and the way you move your weight and pressures in the ground, and thinking about it in more 3 dimensions. So think about your horizontals, verticals, and your torques as well, and dial them in for golfers, the better I think players will get, and the free yards will be found. So there are just free yards to be had. You can find them so easily if we just get you working on the right thing.